So, when you think about all of this, the tail light is reconstructed by one of the CSI workers or one of the evidence people, puts it all together, but there is one section that is not there. And that brings us to the next question in our investigation. Where is the missing piece of tail light? David Yannetti asking if anything was found at One Meadows, John O'Keefe's driveway, where Karen Read said she picked out a piece and dropped it. They didn't find anything there. They didn't find anything at 34 Fairview to finish the last piece of that puzzle. So where is the missing piece? Here to help us, trial attorney Mike Jaafar is with us. And all right, Mike, what are your thoughts here? Where is the missing piece?
You know, Vinny, I've struggled with the whole entire taillight saga in general, just not the missing piece portion of it. And here's why. What we saw in the second trial that we didn't see in the first trial was just how vicious an impact at 24 miles an hour would have been on both John O'Keefe's person as well as the taillight itself, which led me to conclude that the taillight, if she collided with him, the taillight would have exploded all over the street and curb, not just around his body. And we know that there was a snowplow, that came through later. So, I don't lose sleep over the missing pieces portion of it for that reason. It could have conceivably been swept away. I would be more surprised if all the pieces of the taillight were found around John O'Keefe's body than what ended up happening. Again, other aspects of the taillight saga bother me, just not the missing pieces portion of it for those reasons.
Let's take a look, because both sides in their closing arguments pointed to images of the taillight that they believe helps prove their case. We begin with the prosecution. These are all images before Trooper Proctor and State Police seize Karen Read's SUV. And the prosecution is saying these three photos right here prove that the right tail light was in fact fully broken the way it was depicted in that photo in the Sallyport. What are your thoughts about the impact of these photos, Mike?
This is the part of the taillight saga that bothers me. This is the part right here, is this, because this is evidence that is, unless it's an optical illusion, it's very, very bothersome. But at the end of the day, I also look at it, as like a regular, typical pedestrian strike case, which many attorneys will tell you they handle pedestrian strikes. I handle pedestrian strikes, right? And at the time when you are investigating a pedestrian strike, you're always looking to see if it was criminal or just pure civil, right? Because at the end of the day, that's how these investigations happen. And when you do it, a lot of taillight pieces are just swept and thrown away. It's almost just important to say that there was taillight pieces found at the scene of either the crime or the collision. And people at the time of the incident, 6 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the afternoon the next day, they're not thinking to themselves that this would be this massive case, which this case is, in my opinion, the most massive case of this century. At the time, those investigators don't really know it. So it's very conceivable that they mishandled them. Some of them were thrown away. Some of them were just discarded. There's so many things that could have happened that are non-nefarious. But I will tell you, this is the part, the pictures that you showed are the parts of this saga that really bother me, because I'm leaning in favor of the prosecution, but these are the things that peel me back and make me question whether or not my opinion is right or wrong.
You mean give you some doubt? Ha-ha. Although we're spending tens of thousands, in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars, how about, doing that and seeing what we see? Take some images of a taillight cracked exactly like the Sallyport with the diffusers broken out and see if it illuminates or not. That would have been the experiment I wanted to see, Mike. How about you?
There was tons of experiments that I wish I would have seen, and if I were to ever run into Hank Brennan, that would be one of the three questions I'd ask him is, why didn't you do this? Same would apply to the defense attorneys. Here's what I think happened, Vinny. I think both sides did that experiment, and they realized that it became a Rorschach test. I'm just, surmising. I don't know that for a fact. But that is definitely an experiment I would have loved to have seen, in addition to a couple of other experiments, like a dog bite expert. But that would have been an experiment that would have been very telling, because the pictures...
Because we've got the images.
They were telling.
We've got the images. Does it make sense? Would it light up at all? Would there be red? Would there not be red? But no one did it. Okay, our guests are staying with us still. All right, Mike, what are your thoughts here about the way Hank Brennan presented this, what the jury will think of it, and what was Karen Read doing? Where was she going?
I think if the jury, I think Hank Brennan did it the right way. Hank Brennan wanted to give the defense a lot to deal with. He knew that they were limited to an hour and 15-minute closing argument, and maybe he thought to himself, this is a throwaway argument. They're not going to have time to respond to it. I want to put it in the jury's mind. Here's what I think is going to happen. If the jury believes Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts' both of their testimony, they will infer that Karen Read used that time to come up with a defense theory as she sobered up. Because McCabe testified that Karen Read told her that she left John at the waterfall, and then after Jen McCabe outed her for that, she then, that she's, hey, I saw you at Fairview. Then we know that Carrie Roberts testified that Karen Read told her that John O'Keefe might have been hit with a snowplow. So again, if the jury buys that testimony, they will infer that she was testing out theories as she sobered up from the night before. It's a little bit conspiratorial, but then again, that's the brand of this case. If, however, they do not buy any of these, either one of these women's testimony, then I don't think they'll spend a lot of time trying to figure it out, and they'll kind of more focus on the more suggestive evidence. But that's why I think Hank Brennan threw it in there, because he knew that they only had 75 minutes to contend with his closing arguments. So I think that's why he did it.